And hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well this morning. I am just kind of waking up, shaking off the cobwebs, and getting things ready for the day. Laura and I are currently getting everything prepared for DragonCon 2023, and we're pretty excited about it. We basically have been working nonstop for the last few months, making sure that we had a bunch of new content and new material for DragonCon because it is such a huge show. It is a show that people love to come and visit us at. And frankly, it's one of the shows that we love to go to because it's always such a rewarding experience, not only to just have this fantastic amount of interaction with folks, but people really seem to respond just in a wholly positive and unique way, and we love that. So it's definitely something that we wanted to celebrate a little bit. And one of the things we've been working on a lot is artwork. If you've been following our journey at all, which granted we haven't been doing a lot of lately, as far as like documenting, as far as outside of our personal circle of friends, you may not know that we have had a pretty interesting 18 months. And excuse me, a little water here. But essentially, what's been going on is we've been discovering new ways of making artwork. Laura and I started to really decide that we need to start working smarter and not harder. Meaning that we wanted to start making our own artwork that was truly ours, something that we could show off and feel that we were actually just making our own mark on kind of pop culture. And so we started looking at these different ways of kind of approaching that. Now, there were mitigating circumstances. We're not going to get into all that, but ultimately it drove me to start to figure out if these skills that I've developed over, decades could be used in a whole new way. So I sat down and I started working really hard on figuring out what would my art style be. Can I do a painting like this, or can I do a piece of artwork like that? And it turned out, yeah, I could. And the last 12, 18 months has been extraordinarily fulfilling because this idea that I've had since I was a young child of making my own artwork and really kind of like making something that became kind of like my aesthetic, which is inspired by so many different people, started to actually visualize, which was very cool. And earlier this week, I had posted on my personal Facebook page that there was going to be a chance for me to show off not only the artwork, but also have an opportunity to just low key try to show you how I actually paint the artwork. And I thought that would be really kind of cool to kind of go through and to really let you see the process of, okay, this is how I actually approach this. And I thought you would all get a kick out of it. But before we do that, you might see at the ticker at the bottom here the information of when we're going to be at DragonCon. So make sure to take a look at that. And I do have a personal request. It's one of those things that I always said I would never do, as far as if I ever started doing like these broadcasts. But it is something that it's a personal goal of ours, which is we want to get our Instagram going a little bit stronger. We don't get a lot of views on it because we've always been kind of social media hermits. We're like, people who know us get to know what we do, but there's this aspect of, hey, we got to go out there and make sure we still show people stuff. So we're like, hey, go make sure that you've joined our Instagram, just so that way you can follow us and you know what's kind of going on. And that would just be a huge favor. That's it. Just follow our Instagram. No big deal. We want to start to get those numbers up just because it's a personal goal. So if you're seeing this and you've already done that, get a couple of your friends to do that for us. You know us. And if you don't know us, hopefully you'll get to know us a little bit and you'll start to really appreciate what we've done. So that would be just a huge ask. And again, I thank you so much for indulging in that. But we're going to start showing off some artwork here. And I hope you guys get a kick out of it. So the plan of attack is I'm going to show you some of the artwork we've done. I'm then going to show you some products that you can get from our store. And then I'm going to go through one of our paintings, specifically Baby Grogu. Yep, I made a Baby Grogu painting, and we're going to show you exactly how I went through that entire process. So I hope you guys are ready for a little bit of fun here. And if you're getting in here a few minutes late, just say hello. I love feedback. I love it when people talk. So put your comments in the chat. I would love to hear those. And we're going to get started here in just a second. So let me make sure I got everything set up on my end, and then we're going to be good to go. And I think I just heard Laura wake up upstairs, and I think she just banged her banged her knee or something, and she's trying to be quiet. And I think she just murdered herself by accident. So hopefully she's not injured. Thank you so much, Tracy. I appreciate you. So yeah, we got Tracy knocking that out. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bloop, there we go. So now I'm in the corner. You guys can see what's going on, and we can start to show off some of the stuff that we have here. So I'm going to go over to Photoshop, which means I'm not going to be able to see comments for a minute, but feel free to take a look around, and let's see here. So if I remember correctly, yeah, we'll get to him in a minute. Okay, so there's a lot of really cool stuff that's coming up, and I'm going to go full screen on this so you can really kind of get a good view of it. But this is a very fun piece that I made for a coaster. It's actually a reference from something I saw. I think it was a piece of clip art or something. It wasn't very well done, but it had this idea of Ripley having an alien extermination service. I thought that was hilarious. So I really wanted to put my own kind of spin on it. So I painted my own version of the xenomorph. And I love this idea of things being textured, being lived in. And I really made this cool look to that idea. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it's always kind of fun to see. So you can actually see I went through and I did some pretty detailed work. Now, I did slap some sharpening filters over this because I wanted to have some really high contrast. And what that does is it really just makes it look almost like it's an overprint design. And overprinting just means it has like this nice bold effect. But then I got to have a little bit of fun like down here where I used some Art Nouveau kind of pieces just to kind of give it a nice little fun look. And it turned out great. I think it's a really fun piece that was just a fantastic idea that really kind of, when I finished it, I was like, wow, okay, cool. So I saw something and I really kind of cranked that up to 11. Super excited about that. Now there is a second one that I worked on, and when I finished it, I just felt it wasn't up to snuff. I almost made it into a Barbie just because I thought it would be funny. But you know what? Sometimes you have ideas, you execute them, and then you get to the end, you're like, you know what? I don't think it's going to work. So I'm going to show you that one just so you can see that sometimes the ideas don't work. So the second one is this one, which is a really funny, I wanted to do a Ripley. There is a hilarious line in the original Alien, which is they're trying to find the xenomorph through micro changes through air density. And I just always thought that was like the most hilarious thing. So it's micro changes in air density, my ass. And I thought that was hilarious. I think it's a really funny piece. And Laura is peeking around the corner. I'm just doing a live showing some artwork. Come on down, sweetie. Yeah, it's I think it was a fun execution, a fun thing to do. I actually did a really interesting type of print effect on this. So what I did is just I took a basic photo and I just used some techniques to just kind of give her this really kind of interesting looking effect, to almost make it look like she was printed on a t-shirt. I'm not a real big fan of it. You know, it's not as original of a piece as I would like. So I was like, you know what? It was a fun experiment. I'm not going to do it, but I'm glad that I did, because if you don't experiment, you don't have the capability of seeing new things. So I was like, okay, no big deal. Let's try something else. And obviously the extermination services is a much more successful piece. And that's what I'm starting to realize is that I'm moving more and more away from referencing direct photos and really starting to come up with my own compositions. And that is something that I think is a much more fulfilling kind of output. So that's really, really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm not going to save anything for that one. We're always going to go back to Grogu. Grogu's like the sneak peek. So this is probably the big one that everybody's been losing their mind about. I did a quadric of Barbie pieces. And I'll do a little quick zoom in here so you guys can get a good idea of what it looks like. I basically love the idea of Oppenheimer and Barbie being like smashed together. And because of that, I was like, I really want to make sure that I did something cool. And I thought, well, since Oppenheimer's a World War II story. Even though Barbie didn't come out into the mid 50s, I thought it would be cool if I did a cheesecake kind of artwork style, specifically nose art. And that was the kind of art that they would paint on the side of their planes. And I thought it would be really kind of cool. And a lot of it is a little bit on the suggestive side. Normally it's women who are posing provocatively and they got like some text on the bottom. And sometimes like they'll have like like a bomb that they're dropping, stuff like that. And originally I had this idea of taking the old DC bombshell cover where Harley Quinn is riding a bomb down like it's a horse. But I thought if I used that as a third kind of nod, it wouldn't work. So I thought I would go with the more classic straddling, like you're riding one of those mechanical horses look. And then I said, well, what if I go ahead and make it, instead of like the thin, sleek bombs, which to be fair is a little more suggestive than I wanted to go, actually use the Fat Man bomb from Oppenheimer, obviously shrank down a bit for scale, and then kind of put some Barbie pink on it. And of course, then I was like, well, if I'm going to do that, what if I go ahead and give her his hat, and even like his little button here? And so you can kind of get a good idea of what I did, and it looks really cool. And I think it turned out very, very well. So it's a lot of fun. People love this. It is maybe one of our most successful designs that we've done so far. Hi, sweetie. My ear. And then of course I have Atomic Chic since 23, because that's the year that we had Barbenheimer come into play. People have really dug that, and I've been very excited. In fact, in a little while, I'll show you some of the things that Laura has put together. With the ear. I think that's going to be really cool. So after that, let's talk about Ken. Now, I was originally just going to do a cute Ken piece. I thought I was going to do an Obi-Wan Kenobi, where I was going to make it Ewan McGregor dressed as Ken in the jean jacket. And then I started seeing a bunch of other people doing that. And then I saw this I Am Knuff, kind of diagram that they, not diagram, logo type that they had made. And I realized that that was going to be the thing that people were going to take away. And it was on a tie-dye t-shirt, but I didn't want to put him in that. I thought it would make him kind of look frumpy. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to use the pose of him where he's trying to look all sexy and cool and, do a little, since I did cheesecake for Barbie, let's do beefcake for Ken. So I made sure we had some abs in there. So he's wearing the jean jacket, but I didn't want to use the actual jean texture or anything. So when I painted him, I basically just painted the idea of what the jean jacket would look like. And you can see if I zoom in here, there's not a lot of detail as far as like what that is. And then I just found a really fun tie-dye pattern that I have in one of my licensed libraries. And I just used that. And then I just simply did a quick paint over on it to give it a little bit of filter. And then, of course, I put it through a texture. And I'll show you guys how I do that when we get to the Grogu how-to study. But that was a lot of fun. And I think it turned out really great. I think it really, I'm very happy with this one. But from there we get, and I'm going to turn that one off for a second. We go to what I originally was going to do, which is the original kind of Barbie painting, where I was like, I want to do a straight up Barbie painting. Now, you might notice there's a little bit of duplication on the edges here, and that is on purpose. This coaster is pretty much made to scale. This is actually a piece of artwork that'll fit directly on the coaster. And when I painted it, I forgot to give myself a bleed. So I went right up to the edge when I was painting in all these details, and I was like, crap. So in order to make sure I had the correct bleed, I needed to give myself a little bit of extra detail, just so that way I didn't run off the edge or anything. So I added that on just so that way it'll work. But what's fun is I've really been struggling with the techniques I've been learning have allowed me to get really photo real, which is fantastic. But the problem with that is people start to go, well, it looks like a photograph. And I wanted this to be very recognizably a painting. I wanted it to look like, it's what it is. I'm taking the time, I'm laying down colors, I'm really going through the process of making this look the way I want to. And you can even see where like I sometimes messily miss a little bit, but when you zoom out, you can't see it when you're looking at a coaster. But I really wanted to make sure that I did this as cleanly as possible, so that way it looked like a painting, but it conveyed all the information I wanted to. And I was so happy with this. But there was a low-key reason why I wanted to do this particular piece. And that was a couple years back, I had seen this incredibly subversive ad or meme that somebody had done where they had taken a Barbie doll and then they had made the box and everything, and then they had done an exact duplicate of it right next to it, all in black and white, and it looked like the alien from They Live. Now, this is a deep cut reference to a John Carpenter movie from the 80s. Long story short, the idea is that aliens rule our society. We don't know it, and they have us all hypnotized, and there's subliminal messages in everything we see. Every magazine you buy, every piece of technology you look at, everything is basically convincing you that the way they're doing things is the correct way, and you're supposed to stay asleep while they live in our society. And they look like these weird kind of like cottage cheese face aliens where like their faces have melted off and they're like skeletal looking. And they walk around us, but we can't tell because we're asleep to what's going on. So I decided I gotta paint a version of Barbie looking amazing and awesome. And I wanted this to be just a beautiful painting, but then I wanted to do the They Live version because I thought it'd be the greatest joke in the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is your warning. It's a little spooky. It is in black and white because the guy who wears the glasses has to wear black and white glasses, and everything's in black and white. But here you go. Last chance. If you don't want to see, close your eyes for a second or look away. Boom. So yeah, that's the They Live version. And of course, everything has subliminal messaging in it. So it says stuff like obey and conform. And this is pretty much what the little uglies look like. It was funny painting this in, not nearly as difficult as I thought it would be. It basically is just me painting a couple strokes and then painting a highlight stroke onto it. Probably the most difficult part was getting the angle and the detail of the nastiness right. Ultimately, what I did in order to get everything to look kind of the way I wanted to was I actually went in and I painted under her skin an entire musculature. So essentially you have I know, gross, but you actually have an anatomy accurate version of her musculature underneath her that then I popped up and I showed in spaces. So that way she had the right aesthetic. And it's nasty and it's gross. And I did not make nearly as many of these coasters because I don't think everybody's going to want to have one pretty and one They Live. But I know there's going to be some who are going to be like, oh my God, that's the greatest joke ever. And they're going to buy them together. And I hope that they love them because I love this piece. But she's spooky. I don't want to look at her anymore. So I'm going to turn that back on. It's a little freaky, but there we go. So those all 4 Barbies are going to be available, and I'm really, really excited about that. So let's move on to some other ones here. So I'm going to turn that one off. There's again Grogu. We're going to come back to that. Actually, I don't think nobody here has seen this one yet, but we did show it actually at Heroes Con, which this was just a fun little piece I did. I did a Gengar, but not a Gengar. No, Gengar. That's right. It's Gengar. But the Gengar that I made, they always show him as just being like this purple blob. And he's supposed to be a ghost that haunts graveyards. And I'm like, I really want him to look like a ghost. So what I did is I went out of my way to say, well, okay, he's a ghost. He's going to be shadowy. I made sure to put some purple in there, put him in the graveyard. And then I just had fun giving him this really fun glow effect because, you know, I'm from the 80s. Ghosts glow. Like that's what they have, a spooky spectral light. So I had fun making this. It was really kind of cool. A lot of people have asked if I'm going to do all the Pokemon. The answer is hell no. Unless you order them. And then for every person who orders a Pokemon, that one will get added to the rotation. And as a result of that, I will be happy to do so. But I am not going out of my way to make all, I don't know, 1,500 or whatever the heck there are Pokemon. I'll be painting those for years. I'm one person. I have other interests. But I can make some cool Pokemon artwork, which I think is pretty fun. That said, I then did also get a couple of extra custom orders that people asked for. For instance, somebody wanted a Sylveon. This one is actually pretty straightforward. It's such an iconic look. I didn't want to mess with it too much. So what I did is I just found basic black and white line art of a Sylveon, and I did my own custom painting on it, made sure she had good in-depth look. Really played around with some colors, gave her that natural shading, and I think she turned out really well. Again, I like kind of like a a textured, almost, I don't want to call it a grind, but just like a textured look to it. So I made sure to include that, but she turned out great. And again, when you're working from just black and white line artwork, you can do whatever you want to. So it's almost like coloring, you like when you were a kid. So this was just a fun little thing to do. I think it turned out phenomenally well. They also asked for an Umbreon, and Umbreon I had way too much fun with. Again, I always kind of thought Umbreon would have kind of like a glowing magical effect to them. So I went and I looked at a couple of pieces of artwork, and I noticed that they always showed Umbreon on a purple background with like this blue light kind of swirling around them. So I did a version of that. I think it turned out really cool. And people seemed to love it. The person who ordered it, they loved the piece. And that's the fun part, is when we make these, not only do you get the coaster, but you also get a larger piece that's actually for display. And it just turns out really great. Now, this one is brand new. Laura hasn't even seen this one. I just finished it last night, and I did this one simply because I really, really, really wanted to have, I just wanted to do it. I love Ghostbusters, and I wanted to do a Ghostbuster, no ghost symbol, but I didn't want the ghost. I wanted the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So I just had some fun here. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is not a difficult design. He is a very simple thing to make. He's basically just a couple of white blobs. He always reminds me of a slightly happier looking Michelin Man. So I just made a straight up just a cute little Stay Puft. It didn't take too long. I've been working on it kind of off and on when I had a chance. And I just wanted to take out the no ghost, and I wanted to use Stay Puft as well. And then, of course, I just kind of put it on like this kind of fun, grimy background. And then I wanted to have some slime in there because you got to have some slime. There was a moment where I almost did this like a playing card, where I was going to have Stay Puft coming out the top of the no and then Slimer coming out the bottom. But I decided I'd just do a little green slime, and then later on I can do a no Slimer ghost, which I thought would be cute. But I just wanted to have Stay Puft. He's my favorite from the Ghostbusters franchise. I thought it was really cool. So hopefully you guys get a kick out of that. All right, so let's see what else we have here. All right, so boom. This is Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. Obviously, if you're a fan of Disney Plus and you've been keeping track, you know they had a TV show that came out this year. But this particular piece of artwork was made because of the fact that a couple years ago, I was on the American Sci-Fi Classics virtual panels, and they did something called the Battle of the Fictional Bands. And the Battle of the Fictional Bands was essentially, they took a bunch of fictional bands from TV shows and movies, and they put them all into a bottle, the Kiss Cup. And they started to create a bracket tournament. And the bracket tournament was, hey, who's going to, win out of these two pairings? And it basically became a battle royale until there was one winner. And we found out very quickly that you can't put Muppets in this fight because Muppets will always win. But because of that, everybody loved Electric Teeth so much. I was like, okay, cool. So I've made a cool piece of custom artwork for the American Sci-Fi Classics track that you actually can go and buy, I believe. However, it's not just this. It's a much bigger piece. But I loved doing this little bit, and I thought it was a lot of fun. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to put on a coaster. So I did, and I think it turned out really well. And I'm very excited about that. So I'm a lot of fun, feeling very happy about it. But let's go ahead and move on to the next piece here. And I'm going to turn off Grogu here for a minute, just so that way we don't at least keep seeing him, because I'm teasing you guys about Grogu, and we're not to Grogu yet. The Punisher. Oh, actually, that's just one that opened up by accident. We don't need to look at him. Let's see here. We don't need the Sailor Scout one. Oh, here we go. This one is cool. Now, this one is The Last Starfighter. If you do not know what The Last Starfighter is, this is going to make no sense to you. However, if you were basically somebody who had a friend who has shown you this movie, or you grew up in the 80s or maybe the early 90s, you saw this on cable all the time. The Last Starfighter is essentially one of the best sci-fi stories to come out of the 20th century. And I am putting it against things like Star Wars, against Alien, against things like that. It's about a kid who plays a video game, who beats it. And he's in such a small town, it actually becomes like this phenomenon in this little trailer park. And the night that he beats the game, this man rolls up and he says, "Hey, you beat my video game." He goes, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "That's fantastic. I have a business opportunity." And he goes, "Okay, what is it?" He goes, "Get in the car. We'll talk." They get in the car and they take him. Bless you. They take him to space, and he finds out, no, the simulator that he was playing was a real simulator, and he has passed a test. They call it the Excalibur test. And they consider him to be somebody who's going to have the capabilities of being a starfighter. And this kid from the middle of nowhere has to now either accept or deny entry into the Star League and help fight. And so this is their logo. And then, of course, I actually put the phrase that starts at the beginning, which is, "Greetings, Starfire. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada," because that is the line. It is a phenomenal movie. If you have never seen it, you owe it to yourself to see it. There is a B plot about basically a robot that looks like the kid, who's trying to make sure that nobody knows that he's away, and he's screwing up the kid's life. It truly is a phenomenal movie. It's one of those that I wish we could get a sequel or a continuation or a remake of, but it's kind of a double-edged sword. The guy who owns the property refuses to let bad sequels be made, and until recently, he's never heard a pitch that he thought would be good. But supposedly, there's a remake or a reboot on the way, so maybe we'll get one sooner rather than later. But there we go. That's Starfighter, and I'm really excited for that to happen. Next one. Okay. Oh, this is Turtles. Okay, I gotta actually hold. Let me turn everything back on because hold on. Where are my Turtles at? Where did I turn all these on? Now Laura's just like distracting the dog here. And where did I put my freaking color maps on? That's not Raph. That is. Did I mess all these up? No. Well, anyways, I'm going to show you just real quick. Unfortunately, I don't think I put all of my maps on the right way. I think this is one of my older saves. Dang, dog. But these are some Ninja Turtles. I think they turned out really well. I've shown a couple of these in preview before. Laura doesn't want me talking, I guess. I don't know. She's deciding that she needs attention. Where is the rest of these? But what I did is I would base these off of just like little statue 3D files. And then I would just paint, but I cannot find where all the other parts, I don't know where they went. Well, I'll have to go find those later, I guess. But those are some of those that I have. Let me see. Now it's going to bug me if I can't find them. Let me go and find them because this, sometimes you sit there and you get distracted by people. And you wanted to just be what's the word? You wanted to be a chaos noodle yourself. You wanted to be a human chaos noodle. Oh, she said. Now I have Sasha's carrot. Now she's going to bark at me, and she's going to have to suck it up. I don't know where it went, but anyways, let me see here. What else do we have that I can show you? Oh, I got one. She totally threw off my rhythm, folks. I'm sorry. It's okay when you have saboteurs that walk amongst you.
9 pounds of it.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about you, but okay.
What?
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Boom. Okay. This one is actually a funny story. Now. Yes, please no. Let me finish the broadcast and then you guys can do the thing, okay? So this one is Bruce Leroy. This is The Last Dragon. I have a coaster, and actually I can pull that one up too, that I made for myself that I just made this for me. And I love this. And I was like, I wonder if I could sell this coaster. So at Heroes Con, I made a few. And people lost their freaking minds. They're like, oh my God, nobody knows Show Enough. And I was like, oh, I know Show Enough. So I had done these 2 paintings like a while back. And you can actually see, I was still trying to figure out, I was getting, my painterly effect was still just a little too on the photo real side. This one was getting more into where I was going. But I love the look. It just wasn't quite where I wanted to be yet, but I love this. People love it. I'm like, great. So I decided we need a Bruce Leroy to go along with it. So that way you can have both. And one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to do Bruce Leroy correctly, which is in the movie, Show Enough, the guy with red, he looks amazing. When his glow is on, because his kung fu is so powerful, it looks phenomenal. When they show Bruce Leroy, they just back him with a yellow light. They don't give him any kind of depth or nothing like that. So I really wanted to make it look like the glow was working on him as well. I also did something really cool with this one, and it's a new type of effect that I tried, which is I did this kind of cool cross-stitching pattern to kind of help paint it in. I thought it would help since there's like an Asian influence to this. It's about Kung Fu. And I thought it worked really well to get some detail to the painting. But it is phenomenal. I love that. Again, not making a whole lot of these because I don't know if people are going to glob onto them, but I definitely wanted to make sure that I had a chance to do that and to show off some of those pieces. So there is your Bruce Leroy. And again, guys, if you're watching, feel free to say something. I would love to get feedback. I always love feedback. But we're going to move on to another one. Now, these next two were specifically asked for by people who know me and said, I promise you, if you make these, people will buy them. So we're going to put their assertions to the test. The first one is the Umbrella Academy. Now, I love the Umbrella Academy. I think it's phenomenal. But I didn't know what to do for it because if I wanted to do the Umbrella Academy, I would want to do each and every character. I would want to have them all there, and I really would want to kind of showcase each of them. And then I would have the debate of, well, should I do it as the comic book characters or should I do it as the Netflix characters? And one of my friends said, just do like a version of the logo. So I decided I would do so. And I did a version of the Netflix logo with just a little bit of a hint towards the original Umbrella Academy logo. I almost put the symbols on the umbrella of their crest, which is like a skull. And I think it's like a die and a couple of other little things. But I decided to go with less is more. But since it's more of a Netflix kind of illusion, I also decided to put in some things that are pretty important to the plot, such as we have the sparrows over here in the background, which again, they're just a nice little overlay image that I put in here that allowed me to have some shadows. It's literally just a flock of birds from a licensed site that I used to put a little shadows in there. And then I found just a beautiful black and white checkerboard floor that I was able to use with cracks in it, which again, if you've seen the show, you know what that's an allusion to, but it's kind of a motif. And then of course, I just did my normal Photoshop stuff. This is old school work for me. I did stuff like this all the time, making things look like they live in a space, kind of creating cool iconography. That, no problem. And it's fun because this isn't really a painting. It's just a cool design. But I think it turned out really, really well. And I hope that people respond really well to it. So if you love it, let me know. And let me know if you'd like to see paintings of all the individual characters. And if you want to see the TV versions of it or the comic book versions, or if you'd like to see my own take, because I like some versions from the TV show better than the comic and vice versa. So maybe there's a room to kind of do a little bit of all of it. I don't know. But okay, we have that one. This next one is the same kind of deal. It was, if I was going to do it, I want to do all the characters, but I couldn't. However, I found a very cool poster with all of them in it, and I thought I could do a quick painting of it. And that is What We Do in the Shadows. Now, this one is cool because what I did is I found a promo photo of all of them looking up, and they had been lit like they traditionally are with kind of like this green, blue, and kind of magenta color. And I was like, that's cool, but I wanted to do something that didn't really showcase a lot of like their face, give a lot of detail, but made them definitively them. So what I did is I was like, why don't I do it like they're literally in the shadows so you can't see them. And the only light you're getting is basically from some side light, the moon, kind of give like this glow effect. Now, there are some liberties I've taken here. For instance, there's shadows of the moon and there are sunglasses. The moon's behind them. That doesn't make any sense unless they're looking at like a mirror or something, but it looks cool. And then what I did is I basically just did a quick paint over, which is basically what happens. Like there's just a photo underneath it. And I just took a simple brush stroke and I just painted the light that I wanted to use. And then I added in my own details. So that way it looked, kind of like, my own thing. So it's just me kind of quickly going like, okay, there's going to be an edge of light here. There's going to be an edge of light here. It's going to be some moon here. And then I went back in, I started painting in my own details just so that way I have that. The logo treatment is the logo treatment. It's just what it is. Then of course I just had like a really cool moon image in the background, made sure it had the right kind of coloration that I wanted, and boom, done. Very simple piece, very cool. Kind of combines a lot of the skills that I've amassed over, a long fun career. There's a little bit of just kind of airbrushing. There's a little bit of just painterliness. There's a little bit of just using photos and design technique and just making something that looks cool, but isn't so complicated. And again, there's very little detail in the character, so we're not losing anything. It's just a nice piece. And that is really cool. But it turned out so well. I think people will really enjoy it. And I hope so, because I was told by multiple friends, dude, you need to do what you do in the shadows. And I said, okay. Next one up. This one is I as soon as they announced her, I knew I was going to make an Ahsoka coaster with Rosario Dawson. And the idea in my head that I've wanted for the longest time is to have her face completely rendered as her, looking straight on. And then her Leku, which is like that white and blue hair tail thing that she has, just be simple color. So she would have a detail face, and then it would just be flat color around her. So there would be no detail. It would look like a painting that would then become graphical. And I thought that would be really cool. And then they released a poster of her basically looking face on. I'm like, oh my God, they gave me a perfect photo reference. So that's what I did. And I thought it turned out really cool. Now, I did take one liberty with the idea at the end because I thought it would be really cool. I actually had messed up a little bit, and I was trying to repair it, but I had painted her face, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see all the details. So I spent a lot of time making sure I got her face dead on, working on the eyes, and then I wanted to add on a little bit of a lightsaber. I decided that there would be kind of like a red glow coming off from the side of her face just to make it look kind of neat, and painted it in. And when I got to the Leku, I decided to start to paint out the design of her head tails. And they looked fine. And I was like, all right, cool. And I ran just a swash of color through it just to kind of give it a little bit of depth. But I felt like it was missing something. It felt a little too flat. And I had my smudge tool out. And my smudge tool was using a weird bristle. And I had accidentally gone across where the weird bristle was at. And what I had done is basically this, is I had smeared the design. I was like, oh, crap. And I said, wait a minute. And I remember that the Leku on their heads always have like all of these little, they're not just fleshy. They have like these little bends and tears in them, and not tears, but they have a lot of kind of like folds in them. And I was like, it kind of feels like a fold. And I was like, what if I just did that to the whole piece, and just kind of played around and just had fun with it. So that's what I did. I decided to make it kind of just like an angled piece. And it took it from being a little flat to having a nice consistency to it. And it works great. Now, is this the best version of this painting I could have done? No. There are a lot of little mess ups and whatnot. Like, okay, this is a silly one. Whoop, sorry, I zoomed in too much. This is a silly one, but I like to point it out because I like to point out that no artwork is perfect. One, I screwed up my edge here. I actually didn't paint my white all the way to the edge. So I'm like, you see a little bit of where I was just kind of like sampling some colors from this little guy right here, trying to get it all kind of cleaned in, which I was like, crap. Also, this diamond is not perfect. I look at it like, see where this line goes here? It doesn't even make it to the edge. This one's way down here. It works more or less on the crosshair. And when you pull out, you can't see it. The detail isn't necessary, but like my triangles aren't perfect. Like this kind of stuff bugs me, but I try not to let it because I realize that's part of the beauty of making this kind of artwork. The one truly big piece of affectation I did add on is whoever paints Rosario Dawson's face, they really do paint it by hand every single time. It's not stenciled on, or if it is, it's very carefully stenciled on with a template. But the left and the right sides did not match. One side was more rounded, the other side wasn't. One side had sharp edges. One side had the kind of like blunted edges. And it was driving me nuts. And you could only tell if you zoomed in on her face like this. And they rarely do that. And I was like, I gotta fix this. So when I got done and I made one side of it, I thought it was really nice. I just mirrored it and I put it on the other side. And then I cut out that part of her face because originally I painted her entire face in orange. I did not have any of the white. And then what I did is I just simply cut out that with white, and you could see straight through just to the white background. And when I painted the shadows on, the shadows go here, which is why there's not really any kind of texture other than the grain that I put on afterwards. But that's how we get to this section, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I think it turned out phenomenally well. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. Now, with that all said, let's talk about, just for a moment, just a few of the things that you're going to be able to pick up at our booth. We have some really fun items here. This one is actually, of course, the DragonCon scrunchie that Laura has made. These are supersized for the most part because they are just adorable. Laura has made so many of these. We also have an official DragonCon fabric scrunchie as well. Now, the cool part about this is that you are not allowed to use this fabric unless you have actually bought it from a licensed vendor, which we have, which is the fabric maker Quiltoni, I believe. Is that correct, Laura? Yes, Quiltoni. So these are officially licensed DragonCon scrunchies, and I'm really excited about it. Hope you guys are too. And of course, we have the carpets because, of course, they are. The next piece, this one's a no-brainer, that's going to come up is people really want Barbenheimer on everything. So Laura made Barbenheimer bags. We decided that for the coaster, it would have the text, but people really like the idea of the bag not having text on it, so we went no text on the bag. We also decided to make flasks, and we did the flasks with no text as well. I know the bags and the flasks, I think we only have about 10 or a dozen of each. So if you want one of these, make sure you show up early because I'm pretty sure they're going to sell through fairly fast. We'll have a few more of the coasters, but that's because I knew that we were going to have a good chunk of them set aside. But when it comes to these, we had to work with inventory that we had, and we also had not planned on making them until you folks saw the artwork and just said, I want everything. We also have a special sticker that you can come and buy. So if you love stickers, we have Barbenheimer stickers that you can also purchase. But let me go and close some of the stuff out, and let's get to the last cool thing of the night, or the day, I mean, which is the very cool Baby Grogu painting. Now, this is the Baby Grogu image that I had referenced. This is originally from season 2, episode blah blah. It's the one where Boba Fett goes and tries to get the armor back, I think, or the Mando gets the armor back. And I loved this idea of Grogu peeking out from the side. I also love the aesthetic of this wall. Ironic because when I show you how we started, this is not actually involved. Some of the things I didn't like, though, is I felt that the color was a little too washed out, and I really wanted to keep the focus on Grogu. So I just was like, okay, this is my point of reference. Let's really work on it. So what I did is I made just a simple piece of line art just to kind of know where everything was stacked, and I just started to build. So I'm going to show you guys the process of how I built this painting, and I'll zoom in from time to time so you can see all the different ones. It's basically a 10-step process that I'm going to explain, and then we'll kind of go from there. So first off, I just built a basic background. Now, as you can see, and I'll go back and forth here just for a second, you can see there's really nothing in the background here. It's just all blurry. I really didn't want to have the focus anywhere except for on Grogu, so I used them almost as abstract elements, just an idea of what's going on. So I painted in some basic work. This is close to the final version of this paint as far as what I made. So you will see some textures on it just because I went ahead and put that in. Yeah, when I break this down, you'll kind of get an idea of what's going on here. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. So from there, once I finished kind of just painting out the blocking of it, I then needed to block out Grogu. So using just that basic kind of outline and sampling colors from the original image, I was able to do this. Now, I also painted in a foreground element of the doorway. So there's actually 3 elements. There's a background element, the midground, and the foreground element. And you'll see why that's important later. But when we zoom in here, you're going to see there's not a lot going on. You can see that, like, I'm painting fast. I'm using very quick strokes. There's not a lot going on here. I'm taking a color. I'm simply painting it down. I'm grabbing another color. I'm painting it in. And then from time to time, I would use something called a mixer brush, which would allow me to then run my brush over the 2 colors, and it would blend them together just a little bit. So that way I could see if everything was coming together properly. The only place where it really worked where I didn't need to come back and do what I call tightening up is in the eyes. I think the eyes sold pretty well. So if I zoom in here on the eyes, you can see like I was able to just kind of quickly put in those colors. And you're going to notice that as I go through, not a whole lot changed, which is good because, you don't want to over paint something sometimes, which is something I am very apt to do when I'm sitting here doing this. But you'll notice that everything has the same basic, I don't want to say texture, but it has the same basic feel. There's no change in his woolly little neck area, his collar. You'll notice that he doesn't have any hair on his head. You'll notice that everything looks a little flat. Yeah, I have the light painted in here, but it is not as in-depth as it could be. It's flat color painted on each other with some indications of where the light is coming from based off of the original image. And I'm like, okay, where can we go from here? So the first thing we have to do once we've laid out all of our elements and we know where we're going is we have to start tightening up. And tightening up in Photoshop is just like you would in a real painting. You block out your colors, you block out your setting, and then you start to put in more and more detail. You paint on top of the next layer. So in this case, I painted on top of him a second time. And that's a pretty big change. And I'll zoom in just so you can really get a good idea of what happened here. So when you start painting in, what I did is I basically go and I make a new layer and I paint on top of it and I really start to put in the detail. This is where I start using my stylized brushes. A lot of my brushes have really strong brush strokes, so that way they leave a nice detectable region. One thing I love about Photoshop is that you can create your own brushes to give it a real world effect. And I like that because a lot of people go, oh, you made it in Photoshop. That's not real brush work. And it's like, I sit here and I literally stroke all these brushes out using my pen and my tablet. Like there's a lot of work that goes into this. So just from there to there, you can see I went from, really chunky block colors and whatnot to now I've refined it and it starts to come together just a little bit, and again, it's not the best. It's not like the most amazing, but you start to get an idea of what he's going to look like. And you get a really good sense of what's happening. You're like, all right, cool. So again, the next step is we tighten it up, but this time we start using textured brushes. Now, textured brushes, and again, I'll show you from point A to point B, is really going to focus on a couple of places. It's going to basically focus on places that I know need to have a much different look than what's around them. And what we're talking about here is hair. So what I did is I just took a couple of my different hair brushes and I started painting on things like, hair around his head, hair around his ears and whatnot. And obviously, since I know there's going to be a wall here, I don't paint anything past this. I'm like, I don't need to go any further. So I just keep painting until I have what I need. And you can still see there's a lot of little jagged areas that need to be cleaned up. But what's really cool is I then took my hairbrush, and there is a way where you can sample your colors from beneath your layer and have it translate to your brush on top of it. So I used this hairbrush that I had that basically creates essentially just a little squiggle pattern, which looks like wool. And what I did is I started going over the area that I painted before. And again, I'll show you again what it looked like. So here we just have a basic layout of, the colors, where the color and the light's going to come from and what those shades are going to be. Then what I do is I go in after I've done that, and now I just paint over it with that furry part. And you'll see that now all that light and color is translating to these little furry squiggles. And since I keep painting over it and over and over it, it builds up and it looks like fur. So now when we zoom out, we have this nice fur effect, but it plays well, but it's really just sampling from the color beneath it. And that works out very nicely. So now we're getting into like the final kind of looks. We're really starting to refine everything. So I start to tighten up all the pieces. So we go from A to B. Now, I leave what I call lining to near the end. And let me show you what I mean by lining. Lining means that when I zoom in, notice that around the eyes, around the creases of the head, around the mouth, around the ears, I'm going to start to paint in just some lines that really start to give you a sense of solidness to everything. It's going to make sure that everything has a feel. Now, my stupid butt decided it would be interesting to do a solid little line around the fur. This was a bad call. While I needed some detail in the fur here to help define a couple places, you see I'm losing all of that fuzziness on the edge, and I was not feeling it, but I didn't know if I was not feeling it enough. And in some cases, I went too far. For instance, when I was adding on the line, notice right here in the mouth area, when I turn this off, mouth looks good. I added a little too much detail. Mouth now looks like he had a stroke and that part of his face is sagging. So I'm going to have to fix that. But I didn't do it immediately because I wanted to see if it grew on me. But I just kind of went through and just tightened everything up a little bit, made sure things looked nice. And I was like, all right, fine. Good. So at this point, we start using what is called the camera raw filter. And this is like a secret weapon. It is fantastic. If you don't know what the camera raw filter is, you should absolutely look into it. But basically, the way it works is it allows you to interpolate an image that you've already worked on, and you can bring out details, you can adjust colors, you can basically process your image so that way you can handle a lot of things that you want to occur in one fell swoop. So I like to use it to add on a slight vignette effect. I like to bring up the sharpness of the paint strokes because, again, even though this is all hand painted, notice that it blends in real easily. A lot of those detailed strokes you start to lose. It also increases the sharpness, and you can control all of that. So what I did is, since all three of them are on their own layer, I added a camera raw filter to the background, to the foreground, and especially into Grogu here. And notice still here, the foreground is not very well painted. It's really just kind of me blocking out a quick line of where I know where that's going to be. So boom. Now we have an idea of where we're at. And as soon as we do that, you can see now there's a little bit more of a shadow. So I added it in. It gives a nice little shadow effect. And I realized, you know what? I can't apply it to Grogu yet. It works on the foreground. It works on the background. I love all that. But Grogu isn't where I want him to be. And I realized that the face was looking a little wrong now. The line here, I was like, no, I gotta fix that. So I went back and I said, okay, let me go ahead and pop. And that's all I did is I went back in and I just fixed those little spots. And again, I'll zoom in so you can see just real nice and neat exactly what I did. So I went from, just kind of like, just went through, and you can see most of it is gone away, but there are little bits and pieces of the lining that I did keep. I kept the lining around the eyes, as the ears, but whoops, sorry, that's the next level up. But when it comes to down here in like the little folds of the fur and whatnot, I just said, no, let's just let it be what it is and let the shadows do the work for me. And that really played a very strong game and obviously fixed the little sag face there. But once we did that, let me go back into it. Sorry. Once we go back in, it's like, all right, now it's looking the way I want it to. So again, simple fix. And now that I've done that and I know it works, it's like, okay, I can finally go ahead and I can put on that camera raw filter to bring out all the detail. So when I do that, one of the things I do on all my paintings when I'm done is I add in a little bit of film grain. And I do that because I feel that it adds an aesthetic. It's just a little bit of noise that kind of brings it all together. And I'll zoom in to show you, but it goes from here, and then I add on my filter, boom, to here. And I'll show you again. It goes from here. It's painted. Everything is the same. I just simply let the computer simply pull out the sharpness of some areas. I play it around. And again, I'm the one who's controlling it. So I'm saying I want it sharpened by this much. I want to adjust the colors by this much. I want to bring out the edges of these colors. And I just tell it what I want to do. And then I add on the film grain. And if I zoom in now, you can really see that film grain. You see that just kind of broken up noise? It just helps pull the piece together. So I can see A, B. And by doing so, everything is now a nice consistent look. And again, all the brush strokes are all still there. You can see every little piece, but now it's a much more pronounced finished look. And everything is looking cool. So we went from that to that. And you can now see that the fur on the ears is popping through a little bit more. And it looks really good, but I wasn't quite finished. I realized that when I did this, I made Grogu just a little too dark for my tastes, and I wanted to bring out a little bit more color. So I simply added in an adjustment layer to just bring up the color of Grogu in that element. Boom, just like so. And what you see here is just me bringing up just a little bit of the highlights to really make him pop off the page. And what that's going to do, it's subtle, but you see how it just brightens up the whole image? That's all we had to do. It's just brighten up the whole image just a little bit. And there we go. And that is the Grogu painting that we will have at DragonCon. So there's a behind-the-scenes look of how I make a painting. And it originally started as this, right? Not too detailed. I don't have a lot to work with. It's like I got an idea of what's going on, but like I needed to just kind of like go with it. This is what I ended up with. Ironically, one of the things I loved the most, which was this beautiful curvy texture of the door, Look what I don't have. Because I made it all about Grogu, which is the whole point. I got no Grogu. I got no cool door here. So, it is what it is. I was like, that wasn't the point. And that's the fun part about this, is that you never know where a painting is going to end up once you start working on it. Sometimes it's going to look exactly the way you think. Other times it's going to look fantastic with some abstract elements into it. But every piece is going to have a different end result. And if you're lucky, you get close to what you're envisioning. And I got really close here, and I think it turned out really, really well. So I hope you all enjoyed that and got a kick out of it. So I really hope that everybody just loved what we put together. Oh, there is one other piece I can show you. This is actually a custom work. Let me go. It's actually something that somebody asked me for from Heavy Metal. It's a character called Tarna. And as you can see, I used a lot of photo references to kind of figure it out. But if you don't know Tarna, Tarna is actually this lady right here. She's the lady who's got like the red armor on, and she's pretty cool. Let me just quickly, it's going to be easier for me to just do no, give me the.
Don't show no naked people on Facebook.
I'm not going to show naked people. That's also a reason why I'm doing this right now, is that I did use a nude model to reference a body point. So I don't want to, like, I gotta be, there we go. But no, so this is Tarna from Heavy Metal that I worked on. And this was actually a custom piece for a buddy of mine. I'm really proud of this one because this is about 17 different photo references all put together in order for me to kind of get this. And what was really cool is I was able to use a nude model. I buy model sets, male and female, so that way if I want to work on a certain body type, I can. And this woman is an extremely athletic woman, and she had this really cool pose where she was just kind of like in a crouched position, obviously not really wearing anything. And I made two key choices here. One, I asked my friend, do you want her to look sexy or do you want her to look more like a badass? And he was like, look, I love getting commissioned artwork of all these of this lady. They always make her look sexy. Can you make her look badass? I said, abso-freaking-lutely. And then I said, do you mind if I take some liberties with her costume and add on some extra detail and flair? He was like, cool, do it. It's usually pretty basic. She's got the gloves and the one shoulder pauldron. And he was like, but go for it. I was like, cool. And I was like, I'm going to make her look more photo real if you don't mind. He was like, go for it. So when I went to this model, she looked fantastic. But one thing I noticed is that in the superhero pose where she's kind of bent over, her arm wasn't in the right spot. But also I noticed that she did not have, like, she has abs, but she bent over and she had a natural fold to her stomach. And I liked that because I feel like sometimes, people, they focus so much on, oh, well, why isn't her abs showing when she's bending over? That's fat. That's not fat. That's the human body. And this woman is fantastic. And again, I wish I could show you the original image, but again, she is as naked as the day she is born. So I can't show you that. But I wanted to showcase that this woman is just absolutely fantastic. She's amazing. And there is no reason to not celebrate that. I mean, like, if somebody ever would have said anything and gone like, oh yeah, I would have just like lost my noodle, and what's great is when I showed it to him, he was like, oh my god, she's perfect. I didn't exaggerate any anatomy, you know what I'm talking about here, but she looks fantastic. And I think it's a really fun piece. And yeah, she's built up from a lot. Let me see, what can I show you? I mean, there's like the her part of it. And then that's me adding on so I can at least show you a couple little quick things that's not going to like break anything, but I got to be careful. Because again, they're like, there are certain photo elements, if I show you, like, you'll freak out, because nude.
Facebook will strike you.
Yeah, Facebook will strike me. We don't want that. But so what I did is I just basically added, I can show you how I just, painted her together. That was just how I originally painted her, very flat colors. Then I added in some coloration because I knew I was going to have a really cool kind of like psychedelic look behind her. I gave her a shadow where she's touching the ground, make sure that all worked out fine. That was like just a slightly thicker one if I needed it. Then what I did is I just put it on a background and I just started building up the elements. And the elements, once you start to build them in, It's just me putting in some really nice photo elements. He did request the Tarna symbol in the background, which I thought was pretty cool. And then finally, when I finished all that, I realized I needed to make her pop just a little more. So what I did is I added the color in front of her as well. So that light that I'd already painted on, I then gave it a second pass to really bring out some of this. And just because, again, I like to have a little grungy look, make it look a little more painterly, I then ahead and put a little just kind of black little painter edge around it. And yeah, once I finished processing it, so that was what it looked like. And again, this is what it looked like after I finished all the painting and elements. And then when I processed it through the Camera Raw, boom, there we go. So you see, sometimes, you know, Camera Raw just brings out tiny elements and really makes it look cool, you know. Also, I don't know why, but I was obsessed with when I gave her the leggings. I wanted to make it look like she had almost like a spandexy kind of thing kind of going on right there. Well, not a spandex, but that whatever you call that, you know, like when we have them on socks, that ridge. So I made it look like there are actually ridges there. And it's not painted on super well, but again, it's just kind of quickly painted in there. But I love that. I thought it turned out really fantastic. I showed it to him. He lost his mind. He was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And it really got me excited because, you know, these ideas that I'm getting now are just being pulled out of nothing, which is something I've never been able to do before. I'm able to take an idea because this body, like the parts that are originally her face, torso, one leg, and this arm. One leg is changed out. I made it a different leg, and this arm is a different arm. All the armor pieces are from just photo references. I gave her kind of a slightly Japanese look. I used a model reference for the, I don't know, the bikini top, I guess is what you call it. I looked at like I think I was looking at Target, like leggings to kind of get an idea of what the things were. I was actually looking at boots. Do you know how hard it is to find ladies? Okay, let me just tell you something, people. If you ever go online and you type in woman crouching in heeled boots, better have your Google Safe feature on, okay? Because you're going to get some hits that are going to be not what you were thinking. And I didn't think about that when you type in woman, crouch, and heels, essentially. It keyed those three words. It was like boots. He doesn't care about the boots. He wants ladies and heels. And there was a lot of stuff I had to sort through. But I was finally able to find some interesting, I think, I don't even remember what kind of boots these were that I found, but they weren't, what were those boots that everybody wore back in the 90s, Laura? I always forget the name. No, the big the shit kickers. They weren't Doc Martens, but they looked really close to it. So I played around with the kind of rubbery sole a little bit, but they looked a lot closer to Doc Martens than anything else. And then the sword is just a basic sword model file that I just referenced and added in. But that's how the customs are getting made, and more people are asking for them, which I love because I love making this and I love kind of going through this. So I do hope that you all have gotten a kick out of seeing a little behind the scenes of what we're doing here. And I hope that you're all having a fantastic time. And if you are coming to DragonCon, please make sure to come by and see us because it is absolutely one of our most favorite experiences out of every single year. We love going to DragonCon and seeing everybody because you guys always give us such great inspiration. And hopefully you are inspired to create some of your own artwork and to see some really cool stuff. So again, thank you all so much. Do remember DragonCon is going to be from August 31st to September 4th, essentially next weekend, Labor Day weekend. We will be in booth 3229 through 3231. It's basically a double booth. And actually, I have a map here in case anybody would like to see it. So if you give me 1 second, whoop. There we go. So the front entrance is right here. So when you come into the front entrance, you'll just go down one row and then you'll simply go to the end and we'll be right there on the end. We're this double booth right here. And if you got to the Wild Bill's drink, we're right behind you. So just turn right around and boom, we're right there. But definitely make sure that you come by and see us. We are crazy excited to show you all the cool new stuff that we've made. Again, I would ask if you get a chance, please make sure to go over to our Instagram page. It is instagram.com/popcycle. Laura is starting to use it more, and we realize that we can only grow if we tell you guys to do it. So that is my one ask for any kind of inspiration that we may have given you, any kind of ideas that we may have given you. Please make sure to go over and like our page. And if you already have, get a couple of your friends to go check it out and show them this video. Like I said, we love kind of showing our artwork and doing stuff. But again, thank you so much. We're now going to go finish making the last few coasters. In fact, I am going to start taping down a Tarna so that we can make a coaster for you all. So thank you so much for hanging out with me for the last hour. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Please be safe. Please be healthy. Make sure to get your vitamin D, C, whatever you need, B injections, and just take care of yourself. We'll see you at DragonCon, or if we don't see you there, we'll see you at a show in the near future. Until then, take care, guys.